The ocean was a cruel mistress. She sang to men with a voice that shimmered like gold and glimmered like freedom. She promised kingdoms built on salt and legend, and when they believed her, she swallowed them whole. The waves became walls, and the horizon became a cage. For pirates, the sea was both home and hell. They defied the laws of kings, the reach of empires, and even the mercy of God himself. Yet, their most merciless enemy was not the gallows. It was the emptiness between each heartbeat, the long, gnawing ache of human need. 80 men aboard a ship the size of a street alley. The air thick with the stink of sweat, gunpowder, and rot. Rats scurried through their hammocks. Salt burned their skin. Their rum was thin and sour, their food crawling with maggots. And above all, there was the silence, the terrible, unnatural silence that came after a storm, when even the sea seemed to be holding its breath. No laughter, no touch, no woman, no warmth, only the endless blue and the sound of ropes creaking like dying lungs. They were men who had traded everything for freedom, only to discover that freedom could feel like exile. They were masters of the waves, but prisoners of their own blood. Down below, hammocks swung so close a man could reach out in the dark and brush against another's arm. That accidental touch carried more meaning than any word. For months, they lived side by side, breathing the same damp air, their hunger for intimacy growing like mold on wet wood. They laughed at filthy jokes, sang songs about women in every port, and scratched carvings of naked bodies into the beam's crude graffiti of longing. A breast, a hip, a name they could barely remember. In a world without comfort, even memory became holy. This was their church, a floating temple of temptation and denial. The captains understood the danger. They could sense when the air turned thick with tension, when voices rose too quickly, when eyes lingered too long. They knew what hunger could do to men trapped together. A single spark could start a mutiny, so they invented superstition to keep order. Women bring bad luck, they declared. A woman aboard a ship angers the sea itself. But that was a lie, a myth crafted to hide the truth. It wasn't the sea that feared women, it was the men, because their absence left something unspeakable in its place, and out of that silence, a strange ritual began to form. A kind of companionship called matelotage, from the French word matelot, meaning sailor dot. Two men would swear an oath to each other, binding their fates as one. They shared food, money, and when the need arose, a bed. These were not just fleeting bonds. They fought together, killed together, and buried each other when the sea claimed one of them. When a pirate died, his mate inherited his share of the loot, his clothes, even his weapons. To the outside world, it looked like brotherhood, but to those who lived it, it could be something much deeper. No one wrote openly of love between men at sea, but the silences in history speak louder than words. The fragments that survived letters, journals, court records, whisper of affection that dared not name itself. One sailor wrote simply, "He kept me from going mad." That was all. No confession, no apology, just truth. But not all companionships were born of tenderness. Some came from power, others from fear. On a ship where strength meant survival, the weak were prey. Powder boys, cabin hands, and the young often bore the weight of others' frustration. It was an open secret, punished when discovered, ignored when convenient. Officially, the charge was sodomy, punishable by death. Unofficially, silence kept the ship afloat. Captains knew that open scandal would destroy morale faster than cannon fire. And so, don't ask, don't tell became an unwritten law long before modern armies claimed to invent it. Every man had to find his own way to survive the silence. Some turned to prayer, others to song. Most turned to rum. Rum dulled the ache. It blurred memory. It turned loneliness into laughter. But it also turned men reckless. A careless shove, a drawn knife, and by morning another body was gone, claimed quietly by the sea dot. By the third month at sea, their minds began to slip. Fights erupted over trifles, a bad hand of dice, a missing ration, a word said the wrong way. Beneath every quarrel was the same storm, the ache of men denied. Warmth for too long. The journals that survive from those years are full of contradictions. Words of faith written beside words of filth. Prayers scratched next to drawings of women. Confessions of sin side by side with crude laughter. They were men fighting two wars, one with the world and one within themselves. When the moon rose and the ship lay quiet, the sea whispered through the boards. Some nights, a hand might reach out across the darkness, not for lust, but for proof that they were still alive. Because in that endless stretch of salt and sky, the greatest danger wasn't drowning. It was forgetting what it meant to be human. The sea stripped them bare, not just of clothes or comfort, but of identity. Out there were no kings or peasants, no sinners or saints. Only men bound by hunger, fear, and the rolling heartbeat of the ocean beneath them. They called it freedom. But in truth, it was another kind of prison. And as months turned to years, the lines between survival and sin blurred until no one could tell them apart. Because the ocean, cruel as she was, didn't care who they touched or what they prayed for. She demanded only one thing: obedience, and every pirate who dared to call her home would pay the same price: his body, his soul, and his sanity. When at last the lookout shouted land, it wasn't just a cry of relief, it was madness breaking loose. After months adrift in blue silence, the sight of a harbor was like the face of God. The smell of smoke, the sound of music, the sight of women. It was too much. Every man aboard became an animal set free. In Nassau, Port Royal, or Tortuga, the same ritual unfolded. Pirates stumbled from their ships into the streets, drunk on rum and hunger. They swarmed the taverns, gambling, fighting, and laughing until they wept. The brothels overflowed, candles flickering through clouds of sweat and perfume. One merchant wrote, "They came like a storm and left only silence, sickness, and gold." But pleasure was a dangerous currency. Disease ruled these ports like a silent queen. Syphilis, pox, gonorrhea, they rotted flesh, blackened eyes, and turned laughter into screams. Without doctors or medicine, pirates tried their own cures. Mercury ointments burned through their skin. Tonics of ash and vinegar poisoned them faster than the sickness. Some died raving. Some went blind. Others simply vanished into the sea. They had survived cannon fire, hangings, and storms, but few survived their own desire. Yet still they returned, again and again, because hunger always comes back. Governors took bribes to look away. Tavern keepers grew rich. Prostitutes made fortunes in a night. The pirate economy ran not on gold alone, but on lust. And when the next voyage began, the cycle reset. Months of silence, 1 week of chaos, restraint, release, regret. But for some, even that was not enough. The sea had already warped their sense of morality, of right and wrong. Boundaries blurred in the dark. Rum became both weapon and salvation. It numbed guilt, softened shame, made laughter out of pain. A bottle passed between two men meant more than words. Under its spell, the rules dissolved. A hand on a shoulder, a shared blanket come morning. No one asked questions. The ocean had its own commandments. Don't speak. Don't judge. Don't remember. And sometimes, amid that madness, women appeared not as guests, but as ghosts in disguise. Anne, Bonny, Mary Read. The names still whisper through legend. Women who dressed as men, boarded pirate ships, and lived as equals among killers. Their motives were as sharp as their swords. Freedom, vengeance, survival. They fought, bled, and plundered beside their male comrades. Some claimed their hearts, others their respect. When Mary Read was unmasked, witnesses said she had been greatly beloved by her crew. No one dared to say more, because they didn't need to, but the ocean demanded balance. For every secret romance, there was a darker reflection. A logbook from 1698 tells of a sailor caught in sin with a goat. His punishment was flogging nearly to death. The beast was slaughtered and eaten, a grim attempt to erase shame by consuming it. The sea was merciless, but it understood desperation. It had seen it before. It would see it again. In truth, the worst torment of pirate life was not hunger or sickness. It was loneliness, the kind that seeps into the bones and never leaves. Listen closely to their songs. Beneath the roaring choruses and crude jokes, there is a thread of sorrow. Shanties about women who never waited, about homes lost to war, about hearts that forgot how to feel. Their voices echo across centuries. The laughter of ghosts trying to hide their tears. We like to imagine pirates as romantic rebels, wild, free, fearless. But the truth is uglier, sadder, more human. They were men drowning in isolation, using sin to feel alive. Every act of violence, every bottle drained, every night spent in chaos. It was all rebellion against silence. They weren't escaping the law. They were escaping themselves. In the end, that's what destroyed them. Most never lived past 40. They died on decks slick with blood, in brothels stinking of rum, or on gallows swaying over the harbor. No family, no love, no forgiveness. Just the sound of waves swallowing their names. But their legacy endures, not in treasure or legend, but in what they reveal about the human heart. Because stripped of their gold and glory, pirates were mirrors, showing us how fragile we all are when stripped of love. Their greatest war was not fought with empires, but with emptiness. Their greatest curse was not death, but desire. The sea gave them everything and took everything in return. Freedom, it turned out, was just another word for loneliness. And in the end, even the fiercest pirates, the ones who burned cities and defied kings, all met the same fate, swallowed by silence. Their ships have rotted. Their bones lie scattered beneath coral and sand. But their ghosts remain. In every wave, every song, every whisper of wind over the dark horizon. You can still hear them, men who traded their souls for the promise of freedom, only to learn that the greatest prison was within. The ocean never forgets, and the sea, cruel as ever, still hums their requiem.